One will be given the opportunity to ask their question. In doing so, we kindly ask you to give your name and the organization which represents, just in case we have to give you follow-up information after the press conference. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming to the podium the Honorable Premier of Nevis, Mark A.G. Brantley.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and thank you and welcome to another edition of our monthly press conference. I'm delighted to be here as always, and as the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Daniel, has said, this is a demonstration of our commitment to greater transparency and to our good governance agenda. Since our last press conference, I'm happy to report that 6 police officers, 2 inspectors and 4 sergeants in the Royal St. Christopher Nevis Police Force received their letters confirming their ranks. 2 of the officers, quite proudly for us, are serving in the Nevis Division. Mr. Gerald Keynes was confirmed as Inspector, effective December 1st, 2018, and Mr. Kishon Charles confirmed as Sergeant, effective also 1st October 2018. Congratulations to all 6 officers. As we know, ladies and gentlemen, there's an unfolding tragedy in our neighboring island of St. Vincent, and the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines remain in our prayers. We, as a government and as a people, have made an appeal for our people to donate to much-needed supplies for the people of St. Vincent who are being impacted by the eruption of the Msr volcano. I'm pleased to report that last week, Tuesday, 2 20-foot containers with water and other supplies were sent by the Nevis Disaster Management Department to St. Vincent as part of our humanitarian effort geared towards assisting our fellow Caribbean people in the wake of the last Msr eruption. Over 1,500 cases of water and 17 pallets of food, toiletries, and hygienic products were sent. The supplies, we're told, had an estimated value of about 70,000 EC dollars. Let me switch quickly to the good people of Cherry Gardens in the heart of my constituency of St. John's. They have suffered, as we all know, for some time as a consequence of, we have determined, poor construction in relation to their soakaways and septics, and as a consequence, those homes have been really badly affected. If you go into what is a beautiful neighborhood of Cherry Gardens, you will find, for example, that some people have actually started to run water onto the roads, and we have a situation where drain water from perhaps washers and washing machines and the sinks, etc., are actually running out onto the island roads. That creates, of course, a serious health concern for the residents there. I often see children in that neighborhood riding their bicycles, etc. And when I campaigned on the last occasion, this was a recurring theme where people continued to complain and to say that they were suffering acutely from improperly constructed septic and soakaway arrangements. Now, we know that the majority of those homes were constructed between the period, say, 2008 and 2010. And so they are long past the usual time that we would have for remedial work to be done by the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation. We were, however, mindful that these are our people, these are Nevisians, many of whom would have bought their homes in good faith, and so the Cabinet would have deliberated long and hard on the matter. What we would have done was to commission an actual study in Cherry Gardens, and so we had an engineer who went around and used several weeks to visit homes and to ask the necessary questions, and he has come back with a proposal. As a consequence, I'm proud to say that my Cabinet has agreed that the government will undertake and underwrite the cost of fixing the soakaway and septic issues for some 31 homes. That is significant because that adds to another, I believe, 11 that have already been done, and that we hope will bring some relief to the folks there in Cherry Gardens who have struggled with this situation for a very long time, and bring some amelioration to what is a health issue that is now emerging. Government, ladies and gentlemen, is a continuum. And it would have perhaps been an easy thing for us to say that was not our government, that was the previous party who did that. and who caused this situation in Cherry Gardens. But that is no answer to the people who are in that situation. And so we have concluded that notwithstanding that these homes were built some time ago, that it is important that we remedy the situation since we are satisfied that they were the consequence of defective work in the first place. And so we're very pleased that some 31 homes will benefit from that. I would want to go on record to thank the Honorable Deputy Premier, Alexis Jeffers, and his entire team at the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation, but also to thank Minister Spencer Brand, because what we've decided is to have Public Works and the Ministry of Works manage these works there in Cherry Gardens for the benefit of the people there. A significant announcement this morning, ladies and gentlemen, is that, as you know, we continue to struggle with the COVID-19 pandemic. I hope you'll forgive me if I spend a few moments to report that as of yesterday, some 2,972 persons on the island of Nevis had received their first shot of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. The numbers are nowhere near where we would like to see them, because the medical team has advised and the science has advised that 70% is the benchmark. As presently advised, we are at about 36% of where we need to be on the island of Nevis, and wider in the Federation, I'm told, we are at a similar percentage, 36 or 37% nationally. It means that we have some work to do. We're only roughly halfway there. And the numbers each day have not been particularly encouraging. As we know, there's an element of vaccine hesitancy in the general populace. We continue to call on our people to be responsible, to seek to do the right thing, and to think of the vaccine as a protection for them and their families, but also for their community, their island and their country. The vaccine enables us to get back in a meaningful way to work, to reopen our tourism industry, which is so critical, and, of course, to allow us to restore some sense of normalcy to the island and to the country. What efforts are we making in that regard? The Health Promotion Unit continues its massive education campaign. Our leaders in health, particularly the lead of our local task force here in Nevis, Dr. Judy Nisbet, she has engaged with churches, she has engaged in public forums. We have had forums all across the island of Nevis in order to try to encourage our people to get vaccinated. The vaccine is safe. I believe that all the trials have suggested that it is safe. The risks of getting COVID are much greater, and the risks of death from COVID are, of course, immeasurably greater than any risks associated with the vaccine. So Dr. Harris has made it clear that St. Kitts and Nevis will only use a vaccine that is approved by the World Health Organization. And that is why we have the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and that's the one in use. Many of our people have asked, why can't we get Pfizer or one of the other vaccines? Recall that the WHO has only approved Oxford AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Moderna at this point. And I can report that the Cabinet at the federal level has asked me to assist in diplomatic efforts to secure additional doses of the vaccine. We have engaged with Pfizer, and just so the public has an appreciation of the difficulties, Pfizer has said to us that because demand is so far outstripping supply, that they will not even be willing to have a conversation with us about vaccines until July. And if they start that conversation in July, there's a 5-month window before they can deliver. And so if we were to have a conversation with Pfizer starting in July, we would not be able to get any vaccines until perhaps November of this year. Imagine, if you will, that we had to wait until November in order to vaccinate our people. You realize that we would have lost another tourism season. And so that is why we continue to say that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is safe. It is available. It is available at all of our health centers, and we're inviting our people to go out. So interested are we in getting our people vaccinated. Recall that it is free at this point in time. That we are also saying that where there are large groups, companies, businesses, that we are in fact prepared to come to you. And our health authorities have been very flexible in that regard. So we are prepared to come and attend your workplace and to have the vaccination done there. We're prepared to come to your church or any organization where people are gathered to have the vaccination done so that our people can protect themselves. I am mindful of the concerns that some members of the public have expressed. Some concerns I really can't answer because some I don't know where they come from. Somebody said to me recently, for example, that the vaccine is the mark of the beast. Now, that is not something that I can answer. I'm not qualified to speak to that kind of concern. Where there are health concerns, where there are what I would call legitimate concerns, I believe that you get the advice of the health professionals. And that is why Dr. Nisbet has been part and parcel of that discussion, because as a qualified medical practitioner, she is in a position to answer the questions as they're asked. What efforts have we been making in addition to the education outreach? I have personally engaged. I'm pleased to say that so far I've had a town hall with the church leaders on the island and the faith leaders on the island, inviting them for their ideas and inviting them to share with us what they thought the best approach could be in getting members vaccinated. I've had a very good town hall meeting, and all these town halls are being hosted at NEPAC. I've had a very good town hall meeting with the taxi and tour operators, and the feedback there was also excellent. I've had an excellent meeting with our hotel operators on the island, and I've also had an opportunity to speak with the parliamentary opposition here on the island of Nevis. I've done so telephonically, and I have followed up in writing to invite the participation of the opposition. I have said very clearly, publicly, and I say it now again, that COVID is no respecter of persons. COVID is not going to knock on your door and ask if you're NRP or CCM before it strikes. And it therefore behooves all of us to hold hands on this issue. We understand that the country has opposition. I used to be there. I understand that opposition plays an important role. But we must also understand that this is our country. And whether we happen at this point to support government or opposition, whether we happen to be in government or in opposition, at the end of the day, COVID is ravaging all of us. And those who have lost their jobs at the Four Seasons and elsewhere, again, there was no question what party you support before they were sent home. They were sent home because there's no business. If we really and truly are interested in getting our people back to work, if we really and truly are interested in ameliorating the difficulties that our people have encountered, if we are serious about development and we want to see the government's revenues enhanced so that the government can pay its staff and generate the goods and services that people look to the government to do, I believe that all hands must be on deck as we see an all-of-society approach in relation to vaccination. So I've reached out formally to the opposition and invited their participation, and I await some response from the opposition in Nevis in relation to their position. I am also today, I believe at 1:30, meeting with the teachers on the island of Nevis at NEPAC. Now, why the teachers? And I want to say a special word. The message is going to be the same, God willing, when I meet with them later today, because the teachers are a very large constituency. They are a large group of public servants. More importantly, the teachers are charged with teaching young people, generally people who are below the age of 18, and therefore people who currently are outside the group that is being vaccinated. That is important because it means that every day teachers, more than anyone else, come into contact with young people who are unvaccinated. And that, based on the science, increases the risks for all, for the teacher and, of course, for the students. Because the students, let us remember, once they're below 18, do not fall into the category of persons for whom the vaccine is currently recommended. When that changes, we will adjust, but for now, we're not vaccinating persons under the age of 18. So if you're a primary school teacher, if you're a high school teacher, if you're teaching at the sixth form, you are likely to be interacting with unvaccinated persons. And that increases the risk for that person and for the teacher. And so I believe that teachers who have always led in terms of education have a special place here in terms of the vaccination effort. And if there are those out there who are listening to me and think that I am speaking just in a vacuum, or I'm speaking in a theoretical way only, let us consider for a moment the difficulties that our sister island of Anguilla is currently experiencing. And just this morning I checked with a colleague there in the government, and he reported that from a single event, Anguilla now has 55 positive cases as of today. Included in that 55 are 5 students, high school students and primary school students. And included in that 55 are some teachers as well. And they are now forced in Anguilla to test entire schools, form by form, in order to ensure that the community spread that they're experiencing has not invaded the schools. And so to me, the schools are a logical place for us to have a vaccination effort at this point, principally among the teachers. And the reason for that is quite simple. The Anguilla example proves the point that it is an area where large numbers of people gather. And where large numbers gather, COVID is always a danger. And so that single incident in Anguilla should remind us all of the fragility of the situation, the fluidity of the situation, and the ease with which COVID can enter. Consider, if you will, members of the press, and those who are listening and viewing, that Anguilla, prior to this single incident, had, we advised, only 28 cases for the entire year that the world has endured COVID thus far. Indeed, Anguilla had already announced that it was reopening, I believe it was in July, where once you were vaccinated, you could come and there was no need for quarantine. Single breach. And Anguilla now has more than double the number of cases that it had all year, last year. One breach. And so when a lot of us are here saying, there's no COVID here, nobody, you don't need to worry, free up the place, I think that's a stark reminder of what can happen. And I'm understanding from colleagues in Anguilla that this incident might have stemmed from some illegal immigrants coming in to Anguilla and, of course, avoiding the protocols by entering illegally. We are aware of how porous our own borders are. The police have reported, and I'm sure members of the press have reported, on incidents right here in Nevis and St. Kitts of persons entering illegally. When that happens, it means that despite our protocols, if protocols are to be bypassed by illegal entry into the country, then the risks are very real. And that is why I keep urging our people not to let down our guards. We talk to people all the time. One young person said to me, there's no COVID here, so why is there a need for us to vaccinate? Let COVID come. And if it comes, then we vaccinate. That, to my mind, is closing the barn door after the horse has already bolted. Our job is to keep COVID out, keep COVID at bay, because we recognize that if COVID were to take root here, that it can quickly overrun our medical system. The pictures that we see on the media, in places like Brazil, and now, of course, what we're seeing happening in India, I believe should be a stark warning of what could happen here. And yes, we have been blessed, and yes, God has been good to us, and yes, we have had good guidance from our technical people. Yes, we've had leadership that has been prepared to listen. But at the end of the day, our people also have to be responsible. And so I urge our people to please go out and get vaccinated. Incidentally, I asked my colleague in Anguilla, what has this done for vaccination? And he says vaccination is up. That now people recognize that 55 of their family members and friends and neighbors are now having the COVID-19 virus. They are rushing now to get vaccinated. And I said how wonderful it would have been if people were already vaccinated and therefore had better protection against this virus. And so I encourage all of you, and while I encourage you, I would wish to assure the Premier and government and people of Anguilla that our prayers are with them. I would also wish to assure the government and people of India that our prayers are with them. Indeed, we would all know that the first batch of vaccines that we received were through the kind generosity of the government of India. And the fact that just a few months ago, India was looking out for us, so far away from India, and that they now find themselves in this tragic wave that is engulfing that country, I believe that they ought to be in our prayers and that we ought to empathize with them in this very difficult time in their history. Ladies and gentlemen, as I talk about vaccination and our ongoing efforts, I am inviting, of course, the press, members of the press, to join us in that effort and for us to work together to avoid situations as we have seen happening elsewhere. In that regard, let me make this announcement, that we as a government are continually trying to see what we can do to tighten what we are about here to ensure the safety and security of our people. And we recognize that Nevis has been a very popular destination over the years for those seeking work and those who are seeking to live here as residents here. And the Premier's office handles work permits, it handles residencies, and individuals have come. We have had a very open and liberal policy, particularly to our Caribbean brothers and sisters, as I think it should be. What we have now decided, and effective May 1st, is that anyone seeking a work permit or residency or seeking to renew a work permit or their residency will have to present evidence that they have been vaccinated. We feel that this is a reasonable measure to take in the circumstances, just as persons seeking a work permit and residency have to submit evidence that they're free of tuberculosis and syphilis. I think those are the two tests that are applied now. We are now requiring as of May 1st that they also confirm that they are vaccinated. This is not novel because we're seeing other places introducing it. Just yesterday, I think I saw a news item saying in Turks and Caicos Islands that this is a similar approach that they're taking. And we would want the support of the non-national community in this regard. Incidentally, we are advised that the non-national community constitutes the highest percentage of persons who have already taken the first shot of the vaccine. And so we are optimistic that this will not impact negatively anyone. Of course, we continue to say that if you have medical reasons for not taking the vaccine, then you must present, of course, evidence of that from your doctor, and that, of course, will therefore put you in the category of persons who are not allowed to take the vaccine. But for those who can, we're urging you to do so. And we thought that this measure to be introduced as of May 1st is a reasonable measure to combat this disease at this point in time and to encourage those out there to take the vaccine. We understand that persons, even in this pandemic, are still seeking to relocate to Nevis. We understand that persons, even in this pandemic, are still seeking to find work in Nevis. We appreciate that some institutions have to hire certain persons because the skill set might not be locally available. And so we are saying to those employers as well to employ local, first and foremost, where they can. But if, for any reason, the skill set is not available and they require a work permit or they require a renewal of a work permit, that they invite these workers to comply with the new requirements, that they must demonstrate that they're vaccinated against the COVID-19 virus. And so that, for us, is a significant policy shift that we have decided to implement, and I thank the Cabinet for its support in that regard. On to some other news. I was afforded the opportunity that I'm quite proud of in my capacity as Minister of Foreign Affairs to join the new Secretary of State of the United States, His Excellency Antony Blinken, and the rest of my CARICOM colleagues on an important virtual meeting. It was important, in my view, on different fronts. Significantly, it was symbolic in that very shortly, just a few months into the new Biden administration, they have sought it fit to engage with the Caribbean at a very senior level. I thought that that was important. You all may well know that as part of our diplomatic efforts, we have written to the United States and have engaged with them diplomatically about making vaccines available to the Caribbean. We are advised that the United States has over 30 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine stockpiled. Why? Because they had ordered in advance, and the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine has not yet been approved by the necessary authorities in the US, I believe the FDA. As a consequence of that, they have these stockpiles available that they're not using. Recently, I listened to an interview done with Dr. Fauci in the United States, and he has said that he doesn't anticipate that there will be a need for the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine on the basis that they have other vaccines. Of course, they have access to Pfizer, they have access to Moderna, and more recently, they have had access to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And so we have said to the United States that as long-standing allies, and importantly as the third border of the United States, inasmuch as they have made vaccines available to Canada and to Mexico, their northern and southern border, that we think it appropriate that we too be provided with vaccines. And that case was made in writing by our Prime Minister, Dr. Harris, as the lead spokesperson for health for CARICOM. It was made in writing to President Biden by Prime Minister Gaston Brown of Antigua and Barbuda, and it was made in writing to President Biden by Prime Minister Keith Rowley of Trinidad and Tobago as the current chair of CARICOM. We would have reiterated that position. But I'm particularly proud and pleased that the CARICOM community selected only 4 of us to speak in relation to matters impacting the region. And St. Kitts and Nevis was selected to speak and to speak first on the issue of health. And so we were able to make the case quite emphatically to Secretary of State Blinken and his team that the region wanted this type of partnership with the United States. The others chosen to speak was St. Lucia on the issue of disaster preparedness and climate change, Trinidad and Tobago on the issue of security, and Barbados on the issue of the economic fallout from COVID-19. We had a 2-hour engagement, which we thought was very useful and very beneficial. I ought to say that St. Kitts and Nevis, the smallest country in the region, has been in the forefront of the diplomatic efforts to encourage the United States to share its vast supplies of unused vaccines with the rest of the region and the rest of the world. And I was very pleased recently to hear that that effort is gaining some currency, and that the United States now is talking about sharing vaccines with India, which is, of course, in dire need, but also sharing vaccines with the rest of us as well. Of course, it goes back to the first point I was trying to make, because it's one thing to get the vaccine. It's a different thing for our people to take them. We don't want vaccines stockpiled in a refrigerator here. We want vaccines in arms. That is the way that we will be able to reopen our island and move forward. Let me congratulate the Bank of Nevis. It is no small measure that on Tuesday, the 6th of April, the Bank of Nevis hoisted their sign on one of the most prominent buildings, one of the landmarks on 4th Street in St. Kitts, the former Royal Bank building, because the Bank of Nevis has done something, I think, which is unprecedented. A local bank has bought out an international bank. And I believe we are normally seeing the movement in the other direction, where international firms come in and buy up local firms. Here, the Bank of Nevis has purchased the assets of the Royal Bank of Canada. And to be in St. Kitts, to see them unveil the sign and to be there with Lady Sheila Daniel, whose husband, Sir Simeon Daniel, was the visionary behind the Bank of Nevis, I felt exceedingly proud as a Nevision to see our bank, the Bank of Nevis, expanding its reach in such a significant way. And so we wish them all the very best. We thank them and the board for their this new adventure on which they've embarked, taking their business into St. Kitts, and it is my hope, and I said so to them, that they will take their business even farther afield and go throughout the region and internationally. There is no reason whatsoever why the Bank of Nevis ought not to be a truly global institution started right here on the island of Nevis. They, of course, are only 35 years old, and of interest to you perhaps, and certainly of interest to me, was the fact that they started out back in 1985 with a staff of only 5 people and just 250,000 EC dollars in capital. With this move now, they have moved to a staff of over 140 persons, and they have assets now of over $1.7 billion. I believe that by any test is a remarkable achievement for a local institution, and so I congratulate the Bank of Nevis and know that you too congratulate them with me. The police station, before the observer asked me about the Newcastle police station, let me tell you that the furniture is going in as we speak. I saw some photos just yesterday, and apparently we got furniture that needed to be assembled. So people were there assembling the furniture, and I'm told that the police are already enjoying the ambiance of a brand new facility there at Newcastle. There was some additional bits and pieces of work to be done. I think the phone lines and things like that had to go in. The internet had to go in. But all in all, I expect that the police are going to be moved in very shortly, the police and fire services. And so I'm anticipating that question and saying that the answer is that the police are already moving in, and we expect that that station will be fully occupied in very short order. We had, of course, to purchase furniture. Some came from St. Kitts. We are grateful to the federal government for that, and who have responsibility for national security. But the NIA as well made resources available to purchase additional furniture to ensure that our men and women in uniform were comfortable. And so we look forward to the full function of the Newcastle police station. The CCTV room, you would recall that we would have completed construction well over a year ago on a CCTV headquarters, command center, if you will, for our CCTV efforts here on the island of Nevis. Recall, if you will, that the intention in Nevis is to have CCTV island-wide, so that the entire island main road will be covered by CCTV. On St. Kitts, the program had advanced faster than the program here, but on St. Kitts, they had in some areas used Wi-Fi. The advice that we got was that Wi-Fi was good, but that the fiber was better. And so we opted on Nevis to go for fiber. And so we have been pulling, is that the correct term, running fiber, whatever the language is, to get it across the length and breadth of the island. And the idea would be to mount cameras. I believe that we are going to see cameras being mounted very soon. I'm advised that the engineers from Taiwan and Mexico will be here at the end of May, to carry out the installation, and we will therefore be allowed thereafter to properly utilize that new building and to have another string to our bow, as I like to put it, in the fight against crime and criminality. And so we certainly look forward to that and to making that a possibility. Last month, I was asked, again I believe by the Observer, about the energy input from the wind farm. I'm told it's about 0.8 megawatts that they currently supply to us and put into our grid and into our system. The question also came, because I'm just promising, I did promise I'd come back with information. So the question also came about the number of persons who might have been impacted by the Water Department's effort to collect, and had a conversation with the Honorable Spencer Brand, the Minister. And as I reported then, even though I didn't have numbers, that the vast majority of people have come in and have done the responsible thing and have entered into some kind of payment arrangement. And that is why we continue to say to our people that rather than having your power or your water disconnected, please come in and have a conversation. The government is not seeking to put our people in any discomfort, but we also recognize that there are some people who can afford to pay who are simply refusing to pay. And so, for example, as a direct result of those efforts, our collection for February jumped from $282,000 last year to $509,232.09 this year. And that was merely demonstrative of our saying to persons, please come in, please come to some arrangement, and please pay something, rather than the practice that had developed, of persons paying nothing. And incidentally, I just want to say this. Because as a government, you get criticized. You get criticized if you do, you get criticized if you don't. And we understand we live in a robust democracy. But some people said, oh, it is heartless to threaten people to cut off their water in this time of pandemic. And whilst some may have that view, it is also difficult to continue to run the utility if you don't have money coming in to pay staff and to buy supplies and the like. Interestingly, when we looked at those that owed, and indeed those that owed large amounts, we recognize that a lot of those arrears predated the pandemic. So there's some people who haven't paid for years. The pandemic would have arisen in its full rigor last year, February or March, I believe, of 2020. There's some people who are owing since 2015 and 2016 and 2017. So while it's convenient for some to say it's not a good thing to do in the pandemic, the reality is that there's some people out there whose attitude seems to be that we will consume water, we'll consume electricity, but we will not pay for it. And we're saying that we cannot survive like that. All of us have to do our part, and all of us have to pay our share. And where you're having genuine difficulty, we invite you again to go in and have a conversation, whether it be with NEVLEC or it be with our water department. If I can switch gears to the Ministry of Culture, Youth, Sports, Community Development, there is some very exciting news there. The Department of Youth is currently celebrating Youth Month, and a number of activities have so far been hosted. One of the highlights was the first ever Youth Beach Games, which was held on Easter Monday, April 5th, and close to 70 primary schoolers participated. And it was not just games, it was also a learning experience, because they were taught about keeping the environment clean and healthy. We would want to register our appreciation for Swim to Win and the Nevis Aquatic and Sailing Center, both of which participated and allowed us to have this particular session. The Department of Social Services hosted a very special event to honor foster parents on Friday the 9th at the Jessop's Community Center. That event was planned to show appreciation to a group of individuals who are often overlooked, but who continue to make a sterling contribution to our efforts at child protection. We salute our foster parents, and we thank them for their invaluable contribution. As efforts continue to improve the sporting talent of students, the Department of Sports hosted an Easter camp to teach primary school girls the game of netball. This comes on the heels of a very successful Netball is Back tournament, which was held in late 2020, and the election of a new Nevis Netball Association executive, as well as the first meeting of a revived Sinkers Nevis Netball Association right here on Nevis. And all this action was happening at the Brownhill Hard Court, which has become a hot spot for exercise and for sporting activities. Also, the NCDF, the Nevis Cultural Development Foundation, hosted a very successful Easter camp for students. Children were exposed to the art of drumming as well as steel pan playing. At the close of training on Friday, April 16, camp attendees were able to showcase their skills on the drums and on the steel pan. On the issue, going back to the very important demographic of youth, the CARICOM Youth Ambassador Corps, with support from the Department of Youth and St. Kitts and Nevis, will be embarking on a youth capacity building project. It will be a project principally supported by JEF Small Grants Program. The project targets registered youth-led and youth-serving groups. The benefits include a deepened understanding of the proper manner in which youth groups should be structured and governed. Registered youth groups will also benefit from a grant to develop and implement a sustainable community-based project. For more information and regarding registration and participation, please contact the Department of Youth right here in Nevis. And the registration, importantly, ends this Friday, April 30th. So we're inviting you, please, to go in and to register. Our youth, there are opportunities there. We are inviting you to grab them. If I can shift now to the Ministry of Health, the Health Promotion Unit continues, of course, to conduct training and sensitization, not just on COVID and vaccination, but they're also now doing an HIV, syphilis, rapid training for key stakeholders. The training runs from April 26th to 30th at the Gender Affairs Department from 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. And the aim is to expand the rapid testing services to various areas within the community, thereby providing easier access. And just so you members of the press know that there was a time when, for example, to have an HIV test, you had to go have your blood drawn, and a few days later, the doctor called you and hopefully said to you that you have no issue. We now have revolutionized that, and here in Nevis now we have rapid testing. Put differently, you get your result right away. And so what we're doing is seeking to expand that capacity for rapid testing. These are some of the new and innovative measures that continue to happen almost quietly. Not many people don't even pay attention to these things, but they're quite revolutionary insofar as our healthcare is concerned. The World Day of the Boy-Child is going to be celebrated on May 16, 2021. The Department of Gender, in collaboration with the Department of Marine Resources and the fishers of Jessops, Barnsgut, and Cotton Ground, will be hosting a fish pot making workshop, which is slated for Saturday 8th and 15th of May at the Jessops playing field. So if you're a youngster and you want to learn how to make fish pots, please show up on Saturday the 8th and the 15th of May at the Jessops playing field, and the department is recruiting young men to be a part of this training session. We're teaching you how to fish, and I think that that's important. The Department of Gender Affairs is also currently hosting a basket weaving workshop, which started on the 5th to 30th April at the Pond Hill Community Center. The 13 participants were introduced to making various household items, such as baskets, placemats, and various such items from rattan, screw pine, and grass. And again, that's an important skill set that is being offered. Let me turn very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, to the issue of tourism and the Ministry of Tourism. As you know, we are well on the way with our Exposition 2021, Exposition Nevis, forgive me, 2021. This is the 5th annual staging of that Exposition Nevis. And this year, we have chosen the theme, Fostering Domestic Tourism. That was selected at a time when international travel has been at an all-time low. And certainly, we have had to turn to domestic travel, the so-called staycationers, in order to stimulate activity here in our hotel and tourism sector. Incidentally, let me use this platform, this podium, this rostrum, to appeal to our brothers and sisters on St. Kitts that we will be offering specials to them yet again for the Labor Day weekend and for the other holiday weekend in May. I'm told that there are 2 holiday weekends in May, and we're inviting all of St. Kitts to come to Nevis to be with us over here. The hotels are on board, and they will be offering specials for hotel stays and various specials at various restaurants for our friends and family. I've seen businesses like Islander Water Sports already offering discounted prices, round-trip prices for brothers and sisters on St. Kitts to come over. So please come with your families. For those on St. Kitts, come over and spend the weekend with us for Labor Day. And when do they march? On Mondays, they march in St. Kitts for Labor Day. So when you can come over, go down Monday morning for the march and come back after the march. So come over and be here with us in Nevis for Labor weekend and for the following weekend, which will be what? Is that the Whit weekend? There are 2 weekends. I'm not even sure. Whit and Labor Day weekend. Good. So both weekends we'll be offering specials, and you'll see a lot of media on this very shortly because the good people here at the Nevis Tourism Authority will be working on that. But we invite you to come over. And this is part and parcel of what we're referring to as our domestic tourism. Hills and valleys. They are offering a special rate of 35 EC for locals who wish to experience a saddle hill and waterfall hikes. The Nevis Equestrian Center is offering a special of EC $100 for locals to do horseback riding. And the Wally Beach Resort, Golden Rock, Hermitage, and other properties on Nevis are also offering special staycation rates. 3 competitions have been launched for Exposition Nevis 2021. There's a schools essay contest open to children ages 8 to 17. The topic is, how can we foster the growth of domestic tourism in St. Kitts and Nevis? There's also the Creative Seafood Dish Competition, which forms part of the Jessup's Seafood Fiesta. First prize is $500. Then there's the Nevis Garden Competition, where participants can enter in the vegetable or ornamental categories. The garden competition is open to householders, schools, churches, and businesses. On Thursday, the 26th of April, a tree planting exercise was held at Pinnis Park in celebration of Earth Day under the theme Restoring the Earth. Trees were symbolically planted by a number of people, including His Excellency Tom Lee, Ambassador of the Republic of China, Taiwan to St. Kitts and Nevis, Her Honor, our beloved Deputy Governor General, Mrs. Hailita Liebert, several members of the NIA Cabinet, former premiers, His Excellency Ambassador Vance Amory, and the Honorable Joseph Parry, and the widow of our first Premier National Hero, Mrs. Sheila Daniel, Lady Sheila Daniel. We also had trees planted by the oldest person was Mrs. Eunice Griffin, good Reverend Griffin. She at 93 would have planted a tree, and we had trees planted from our young people, ranging from the Ines, France, and Charlestown preschools all the way up to the 6th form. By the time the park is done, which I think is instructive, we would have planted 3,000 trees at the Pinnis Park. You would recall, members of the press, that it was last year that we announced a very ambitious plan to plant 10,000 trees on the island of Nevis. We did not make it. We fell short. We got to just over 6,000 trees planted last year. But with the Pinnis Park, we will get to the 10,000 mark this year. And so we're happy, and I congratulate the Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, and of course, the Permanent Secretary, Huey Sargent, and the team there who continue to press ahead with this. We had a very lovely event at the Artisan Village. They held the very first night market on the 24th of April. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. Let me thank P.S. John Hanley and the team. Let me also thank Nayoka Bailey. She was the principal person involved with the organizing. I think they did an excellent job, and the public responded in large numbers for a wonderful, cool evening at the Artisan Village. Many artisans came out to showcase what they were doing, and I learned a lot being there because some of the things I didn't even know were being made in Nevis. I saw one young lady who happens to be a cousin of mine from Brownhill who was actually making silver jewelry, beautifully designed, and I didn't even know that that was happening here. So the truth is that there's a tremendous reservoir of talent here, and we're trying to create opportunities for them to showcase what they have and encouraging always our local people to buy local and to support our local businesses. So we commend P.S. Hanley and the team. We commend Nayoka Bailey, who led that particular team to put it all together. But all the members of staff at the Ministry of Tourism would have performed incredibly well. They also had a domino competition. 16 teams participated, and the winners that emerged were Edison Paris and Keithley Ferguson. And we commend them. Second place, I'm told, went to Brian Brooks and Arlington Berridge. And the contest, I'm told, was keenly contested. We thank, of course, all of those who participated, and Zulu Aaron Howell, or Aaron Zulu Howell. He was the one who organized the tournament, so we thank him as well. The general public has been very supportive thus far, and we encourage you to continue to support the efforts in terms of Exposition Nevis. Interestingly, the upcoming events include the Jessup's Seafood Fiesta. That's on Labor Day, Monday, 3rd May, at the Heritage Village Life Open Day at the Nivision Heritage Village on May 7th, and the New Rivers Farmers Association Open Day at New River on Saturday, 15th May. There will also be a virtual culinary tour on Saturday, 22nd, involving 2 of the local bars. It's interesting, a virtual culinary tour. I suppose you taste the food virtually. The ministry will also be hosting a 2-day tourism entrepreneurship workshop for persons wishing to start their own tourism business. This will be held on May 11th and 12th. And on the May 29th, there will be a meditation and exercise session at the beach at the Hamilton. This is a joint initiative of the Ministry of Tourism, the Nevis Tourism Authority, and the Health Promotion Unit. So please, if you can note these dates, the Barnsgut Breadfruit Festival is going to be on Saturday, the 12th of June. The Nevis Mango Festival will be on Friday 2nd to Sunday 4th July. Incidentally, I'm told that there will be a cook-off that I'm going to be involved in again. Hopefully I could win this one, so I'm going to be practicing for that. The Friday the 2nd to Sunday the 4th of July. Then the St. Kitts Nevis Restaurant Week is Thursday 15th to Sunday 25th July. The theme ingredient is sweet potato. And the Nivijan Heritage Day will be Saturday 31st of July. From the NTA, our Nevis Tourism Authority, we have had some excellent press coverage despite the challenges of the pandemic. There was an article on Nevis in the widely distributed Travel and Leisure magazine. Nevis has been nominated for the leading romance destination in the Caribbean in the World Travel Awards. And the NTA would have hosted journalist Erin McGee, who is also part of the Nevis Ambassador Program. The Nevis Ambassador Program is a mix of journalists, travel agents, and influencers who promote Nevis on a variety of social media platforms. The NTA is also very excited. They're showcasing the people and the culture of Nevis through a fascinating video series called Escape to Nevis, hosted by the NTA CEO, Ms. Jadine Yard. On a broader level, through the interview series, the NTA wishes to create a personal connection with our potential visitors, one that will spark both interest and consideration for our island. They have also launched a marketing survey, which so far has got great feedback from our source markets, and the survey is intended to provide insight to allow for our marketing efforts to be more tailored. As part of the Earth Day initiative, I mentioned we were planting trees at Pinnies. The NTA was also involved with a cleanup at Gallows Bay, and we advised that our Deputy Governor General, Hailita Liebert, would have joined them when they did that cleanup. Ladies and gentlemen, let me move to a topic that has been topical. It has been in the press, and I've been asked about it as well, and that is the issue of severance pay. We know that many of our people who have lost work and have applied for severance payment have up to date not yet received. We are heartened because we continue to agitate at the federal level and to encourage a more rapid movement there. In fairness, they have been overwhelmed because the numbers of claims have been quite considerable. But just so you know, in terms of statistics, that the number of claims to date have been 2,284 claims. 2,284. The number processed to date, 1,837. So that leaves another 1,047 claims to be processed still. There are 48 claims currently awaiting payment, and the total paid out in severance payments thus far is some $30,042,565.65. I'm advised that some 69% of the total claims paid have been for Nivision employees to date. So some 69% have been for Nivision employees. I do not at this point have a breakdown of the numbers for Nevis specifically. These are national numbers. But these were the numbers that I was provided with. I want to thank the Honorable Wendy Phipps, who provided me with these numbers. Of course, she has responsibility for labor. I empathize, of course, with those who are still waiting for their severance payments. But I can say to them that effort is being made, indeed considerable effort is being made to work through. And just so the public understands that some of the difficulty, from what I gather, particularly in relation to the Nevis claims, is that we had some people in Nevis who worked 2 and 3 jobs and have claimed 2 and 3 times. So they've claimed from each job. And so their names are popping up on more than one list, so to speak. And so they're having to redo those. There was also a complaint that in relation to some employers of long standing, that when they asked when was the start date for this employee, they were being given a date 20, 30 years ago. And it had not been taken into account that those businesses might have closed or that employee might have had severance paid to them during the course of that business. So an example would be the Four Seasons Resort. They would, as we know, have been closed for different periods for different reasons. Hurricane, for example. And so workers might have been able to access severance pay then. So when the question is asked, what is the start date of this worker, you shouldn't go back to when Four Seasons opened in 1989. You should really go to the period when people came back to work. And so all of these issues, because that impacts what you can claim, how much your claim is likely to be. So they've had to redo a lot of the paperwork, and they're having to go through person by person. Another problem, of course, was the fact that some employers have not been current with their severance payment. And so we had, as a government, to take a difficult decision to say that that ought not to prevent the employee from collecting. But that, too, has delayed the process because some employers have not been responsible. I keep using that word because I think all of us have a duty to be responsible. And so those are some of the reasons that have led to some delays. But I would want to assure the public, particularly the workers here in Nevis, we get a number of calls. People are saying that they're fed up, they're upset. I understand that. But to let them know that the process is still ongoing and that we are asking for their patience as we try to ensure that we are accurate in what we do. And the problems I've described are just some of the difficulties that are being experienced. But thus far, again, some 2,284 claims have been filed. Some 1,837 have been processed. Have been processed. There are 1,047 still to be processed. The number of claims paid out to date, 1,789. Total claims awaiting payment, some 48 as of yesterday. And the total amount paid out to severance as of yesterday was $30,042,565.65. Again, some 69% of the total claims have been to Nivision employees. Total claims paid have been to Nivision employees. Just switching very quickly now to the Ministry of Communication and Works. The Nevis Water Department, through the Nevis Disaster Management Department, is pleased to advise that they too are part of the relief effort in St. Vincent, and they would have sent 100 cases of 5-gallon bottles of water to St. Vincent and the Grenadines as part of that relief effort. Nevis has always had a collaborative approach to occupational safety and health issues over the years, and the World Day for Safety and Health in the Workplace 2021 will be celebrated on Wednesday, 28th April. The theme for the celebration day is Anticipate, that's today. Anticipate, prepare, and respond to crises. Invest now in resilient occupational safety and health systems. The Ministry of Labor and the Nevis Labor Department recognize that there's a great need for awareness in Nevis, especially now that the focus this year is on the global pandemic, the COVID-19 virus. To this end, and in celebrating the important day, a number of activities will take place in collaboration with the allied stakeholders, namely disaster management, environmental health, and the St. Kitts and Nevis Social Security Board Nevis branch. These include a church service that occurred on Sunday, April 25th, a brief address by the Minister of Labor that will be done this evening on NTV, and joint inspections on April 28th. Just to add, and I end on this note, that the good people of Butlers, who have waited long to have their road done, that a town hall meeting was convened on Monday, just 2 days ago, in Butlers to apprise the people of Butlers of the imminent start of construction of that road. I was very happy that the Minister with responsibility, Honorable Spencer Brand, and the Honorable Representative for that area, the Deputy Premier Alexis Jeffers, that they were both able to attend and to interact with the people of Butlers and to answer questions. I would say to the people of Butlers that road construction is always going to create some level of discomfort for you. There will be some disruption to the ordinary flow of traffic, and of course the dust and the noise. But we are hopeful that just as we've done in Hanley's Road, in Braziers, in Brown Hill, just as we've done in Shaw's Road, just as we've done on the Island Main Road, and frankly all over Nevis, that they will have a proper road surface in short order. I'm advised that the amount to be spent there is some $3.8 million. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I end there and allow you, if you have any questions, to have an opportunity to ask those questions now. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Monique Washington, St. Kitts Nevis Observer newspaper. Well, the federal government has said that they would like to reach herd immunity by June or July of this year. However, within the last couple of weeks, and you admitted today that we have seen a decline in the number of persons taking the vaccines, especially in Nevis. I mean, there has been about 100 persons that would have taken the vaccine within the last week. What happens if the Federation does not reach herd immunity by the summer? And besides tourism, if you're unable to get the tourism sector back up, is there any other backup plan from the NIA to get persons back out working and restarting the economy? Now, we know that it is not mandatory for persons to take the vaccine, but we have seen businesses now telling their employees to take it or else, or take it and you get this, and things like that. As a seasoned lawyer, Mr. Premier, are employees legally obligated to take the vaccine if their employers ask? And the NIA, well, the last thing that you mentioned was about the $3.8 million road in Butlers, but has the NIA considered fixing the Islands Main Road between Catesby Jones Estate to the airport? And you mentioned the Newcastle police station, which was one of my questions, but you did not mention anything about the fire station. What is the update on that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that the entire building, and the building is housing police and fire, that the entire building is being made ready for moving. And as I said, I'm told that some people have actually slept there over the past few nights. So the short answer is that the building is being made ready, and I anticipate that fire and police should be moving in short order. The Prime Minister, having responsibility for national security, including the fire services, did indicate at the opening that a fire tender was being purchased nationally, federally, in order to be placed there. But I would anticipate that all the necessary officers will be there in very short order. So I'm pleased at that, because I know that that was an issue that you have brought here before. And last month I didn't have a direct answer for you, but I can tell you now that the moving in has already started. The Island Main Road, have we looked at that? Yes, and we've looked at many other roads. Bath is a road that we promised to do this year. We have roads literally all over this island. People now are building in some new areas, and they're saying, like everybody else, I'm a taxpayer, I want a better road. And so we have been trying. But we also appreciate that there is great difficulty. The people of Brown Hill waited over 50 years to get their road done. The people of Butlers, I'm sure, would have waited for a similar period. They're now getting some relief. I'm not suggesting that we all have to wait for 50 years. I'm simply saying that all of these things have to be put in perspective and into context. In fact, it's interesting you ask the question about roads, because as the government has tried to respond to the demand for roads, you hear the criticism that that's all you're doing is building roads. So we understand, and I like to always comment on the robust nature of our democracy, that people, even if you did the best that you can and there was a reward to everyone, you still have criticism. But we are looking at the Island Main Road, yes. We are also looking at other roads, and we're seeking to prioritize them. This year, we did say in our budget that Butlers Road and Bath would be the two main focus for this year. You said I'm a seasoned lawyer and you wanted some legal advice. I haven't practiced law in a while, and in any event, legal advice costs money. So I'm unable to help you on that. What I will say is that I believe it is universally accepted that people are not mandated to take a vaccine. But if you choose not to take the vaccine, then there may be consequences for not doing so. So you can decide, I won't take the vaccine. And that is your personal choice. But I can also decide, well, this is my business. It's a private business, and if you don't take vaccine, you can't work here. That's also the choice of the business. So it creates a lot of very debatable issues. And that is, I think, where I see the world going. For example, in Israel, in order to access restaurants, supermarkets, bars, nightclubs, etc., you have to present proof that you've been vaccinated. Denmark has just rolled out an app, because the same thing in Denmark. If you need to go to a restaurant, you need to go to a bar, nightclub, whatever, you have to show. So they have the phone and they scan it. Yes, this person is Mark Brantley is vaccinated, he can come in. Monique Washington is not, she can't come in. So while nobody can force you as an individual to be vaccinated, no police is going to come, break down your door, grab you, and take you to the hospital to get a vaccine. That's not going to happen. But clearly there are consequences of not vaccinating. I am advised that the cruise ships, for example, are already saying that when they return, and I'm told by the minister in St. Kitts, the Honorable Lindsey Grant, that they will start to come back sometime around July. That they are already saying that they don't want their guests to go into any taxi where the taxi man is not vaccinated. They don't want their guests to go on any catamaran cruise where the crew is not vaccinated. They don't want their guests to go on any zip line or any tour or any hike or any ATV where the people are not vaccinated. So what is going to happen is that as the world changes, and the world has changed, individuals who decide that they're not going to vaccinate, not having any medical reason for not doing so, are arguably going to get left out. It may sound harsh, but that is where I think things are headed. If you plan on traveling in the near future, I'm pretty certain that the airlines are going to say, you have to be vaccinated, you have to present proof. And I can't blame them, because if I have been responsible and I have vaccinated and protected myself, why should I sit in a seat next to you when you say you're not take none? So, everybody has a choice. You can go downtown today and you can choose to go into a store and steal, or you can go downtown today and go in the store and decide to pay for what you take up. That's your choice. If you decide to steal, you may end up in jail. That's the consequence. So a lot of people are putting this about human rights and, choice, and yes, absolutely. Nobody can force you. But people must also understand that businesses, and I've seen some very strong letters from TDC, I've seen some from Rams and other companies, and I can't blame them, because they too are concerned. And they're saying, if our staff decides that they're going to vaccinate, and some staff members decide they're not going to do it, and I'm sure all of you here have heard some of our people, me not do none. I don't care what anybody says, I'm not doing it. That's a different thing when somebody says, I have a medical situation why I can't do it. But some people are just saying they're not doing it. So is that person who takes that position then entitled to waltz into Rams or waltz into wherever and say, I come to work regardless, and the people who shop here must deal with me in an unvaccinated state? Those are the hard questions. I don't know what the answers are, but I understand where the country is going to head, as a matter of course, just as other countries are doing it. Because COVID, as the Anguilla experience teaches us, is lurking. All COVID is looking for is an in. COVID wants a little, give it a chance. And if it gets in here, well, we will have some serious difficulties. And so I encourage again the members of the press, please, to help us to get that message out, that vaccination is really the answer for the island if we are to move forward. Alternative to tourism, it sounds easy, Monique, but it's not really that easy, because tourism, in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the built infrastructure, the hotels, the staff, the grounds, the amenities, and the support, the fishermen who dive and get the lobsters for the tourists, the water ski operators, the water sports operators, catamaran cruises, all of those are dependent on this industry. So it's not an easy thing to say that in response to a pandemic which is 1 year old, that you have alternatives for jobs for people. That is why it is so important for us not to miss another tourism season. Yes, we are trying to diversify. You would have heard us talk in the past about the movie industry that we have brought here to the Federation. I was very happy just a few days ago to visit the set of the new movie that is started called Assailant. And that new movie is being filmed here and will also partly be filmed on our sister island of St. Kitts. We're delighted that the producers have seen the value in exposing both islands, as it should be. What is important is that we are trying to diversify. We're focusing more on construction and have incentivized the construction sector. We're focusing on agriculture and food security. We've incentivized the agricultural sector. We have made, as you know, money is available to small businesses, particularly businesses owned by women and youth, and there has been good pickup in that regard as we try to give them seed money to start up their businesses and empower the small business sector. So that instead of everybody looking a job, they can actually do something for themselves and who knows, employ some other people as well. We have this movie business that we have started to engage in. We have licensed international banks as we try to empower and stimulate the international financial services sector. So we have not been resting. But I would not be honest if I stood here and said to you that we had an answer that would replace tourism overnight. It cannot happen. Nowhere in the world could it happen. Nowhere in the world are you able to transition an entire economy from one thing to the next. It is simply a process that takes time. And we do not have the luxury of time because these months that we're here sitting down and wringing our hands and saying, well, I don't know. Somebody said they were going to take the vaccine. Then somebody sent them something on their WhatsApp and they said, boy, no, they ain't taking it again because somebody somewhere says something. And that is the nature of things. So what are we going to do? The country needs to open. We absolutely need to open and get back to work. So that's where we are. What happens if herd immunity is not achieved? I'm hopeful that herd immunity will be achieved. I'm hopeful that everybody in this room is already vaccinated. If you're not, that you go and get it. I'm hopeful that you encourage others to get it and that each of us becomes an advocate. In politics, I like to say that every person has a sphere of influence. Each of us. There are persons that people around me can get to vote that don't even speak to me. That's the nature of things. Just so, for this vaccine, I can talk until the cows come home. There are some people who will not pay attention to what I say. But if you say so, they will say, this is my friend, it's my colleague, it's my boyfriend, my girlfriend, this is the person I love, it's my relative, I'm going to do it. And so each of us has to see the value, and that is what I am trying to do. I am not, as Premier, taking any big stick approach. I have not spoken in robust language. I'm simply saying to our people that we have to recognize that this is in our best interest, and the only way that we can get back to work. So when you make a beeline for the minister's office, for the Premier's office, saying you need work, consider that if you vaccinate, your chances of getting work are much enhanced. So if you stay in this state of denial and vaccine hesitancy. So we encourage our people to go out and to get vaccinated. Incidentally, since I'm talking about vaccine, just last night the Honorable Prime Minister would have announced some changes, some relaxation of the protocols. And so now if you're vaccinated, people who are having fetes and parties, etc., they are allowed to have them if the people are fully vaccinated. They can go in without the limitations that had hitherto applied. You would remember that the limitation that hitherto applied was you had a maximum of 150 people, which for many promoters, you can't make money with 150 patrons. So this now opens it up to have the large fetes like they used to, but people would have to be vaccinated. And then, of course, if you insist that you do not want to be vaccinated, then you could fet as well, but you're limited to the 150. They're also relaxed in terms of the quarantine for fully vaccinated individuals coming in. That has gone from 14 days now to 9 days. And the intention, as I understand it, based on the advice, is to continue as numbers go up in terms of vaccinated persons locally to reduce the period of quarantine until hopefully we can eliminate it altogether. So currently we have gone from 14 days to 9 days for those who are fully vaccinated. So those are some of the changes that are being made. And for those who are anxious for sporting activities, you would have heard that the CPL, for example, is coming back. And again, if you're fully vaccinated, you can go in the park and have a good time. If you're not fully vaccinated, then you have some restrictions that will be applied to you. So there are every reason in the world for persons to go out and get vaccinated, because vaccination allows us to restore normalcy to our country, and that's really what we want at this point. Any other questions for me?
Mr. Premier, good morning. German Abel, SKN Pies. I just want a quick follow-up before I ask a question. You talked about those persons who are seeking work permits and regularizing themselves and so forth, that they have to be vaccinated. Should someone who isn't vaccinated come in to apply, what's the consequence in that regard?
Well, they can't get the work permit. They can't get the residency renewed. It's now a requirement. Similarly, if somebody is seeking a work permit here and they can't produce a negative test for TB or syphilis, they can't get the work permit. They don't qualify. This is now a qualification.
Okay, a couple of questions. One, we're talking about the whole issue surrounding vaccine and whether or not it's mandated, either at the public or the private sector levels. Mm-hmm. Can you give a sense of what it's like on Nevis in terms of the public sector? What sort of feedback you've been receiving about whether or not persons have been getting vaccinated? Because you're saying 36%. And there's this toss-up between mandate and it's not mandated. What is your position, again, for those within the public sector when it comes to the whole issue surrounding being vaccinated on Nevis? Also, India has been affected by the COVID-19 and all of that, and vaccines not coming out. How do you see that impacting St. Kitts and Nevis's push to, one, herd immunity, but also their assistance in terms of combating COVID-19? And my final question for now is, would you say that the government is doing enough when it comes to speaking to the small man on the street? Because we're seeing all those people who are, I don't want to say highly educated, but we're seeing a lot of people who are affluent, and those people coming down that specific chart being vaccinated. But when you begin to talk to the man on the street, there is where the vaccine hesitancy is. Is the government doing enough to address and speak to those people?
I start where you ended, the question of are we doing enough? My short answer is we need to do more. I believe that we're doing a lot, but clearly if that messaging is not getting through, then we need to do more. And we need, to use your language, the small man, we need every man and woman vaccinated. That is the reality. I, however, feel that the hesitancy isn't restricted to any particular community. We're getting vaccine hesitancy from people who are university educated. We're getting it even from some health professionals who, for whatever reason, are advocating a position. I've heard health professionals, for example, prominent health professionals say things like they're waiting for another vaccine. They're not going to take this one, which is fueling the negativity, because really and truly, scientifically, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. So we need to do more, and I believe here in Nevis we are doing a lot, and we will continue. As I recounted in my opening statement of the meetings and engagements that I have had thus far as Premier. And what we're doing now in Nevis is we're looking at groups. So rather than saying we just have a town hall, we are having a meeting with the hoteliers, we're having a meeting with the churches, etc. So we find in those focus groups, we get more of a conversation and less of a speech. And so that's what we have been trying to do in Nevis. And as I said today, we will have a conversation with our teachers at NEPAC, and I'm hopeful that we have a good turnout there. India and what is happening in India, as I've said, is quite tragic. I certainly empathize, and I believe that all of us should be encouraged to pray for the people of India. I don't see that, however, necessarily impacting us because, of course, there are multiple sources for vaccines, not just India. India was of assistance to us diplomatically, by providing vaccines in the earliest stages. You will recall we got 20,000 doses from India. That's what started our vaccination process. But there is, of course, other options, including the United States, that we're looking at for the potential for vaccines. The public sector in Nevis being vaccinated, you said you wanted my position. My position is exactly what I'm doing now. I'm encouraging. I am advocating. I am begging. I'm beseeching. I'm pleading. And I want the public sector to appreciate that thus far we've been very, 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 did I say very? Very privileged on the island of Nevis, because every public servant has been paid on time and in full. I cannot today give any assurance that that will continue indefinitely. And I believe that point needs to be made, because there's some people sitting down in government positions who figure, I safe, my pay safe, my money safe, so I don't worry about them because I don't work in a hotel. I don't work in tourism. And I'm saying that is the hotel and the tourism and the business that generates the taxes for government to pay you. So understand that nobody is safe. And I'm a public servant, I put myself in that category. Nobody is safe insofar as the job and the salary and all that is concerned. Some leaders like the Honorable Ralph Gonzalez, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, have been very blunt with their people. So I can't guarantee, and he's right. St. Lucia, I believe, Prime Minister Shastane from an early stage started to pay you in part and give you an IOU for the rest. We are not there yet, and I think the sad part about this is that the way that St. Kitts Nevis, and let me talk about the island of Nevis, the way that Nevis has managed thus far this pandemic, no deaths, as we speak, no active cases, public servants paid on time, in full. There are some here who seem to have lulled themselves into a sense of security, a false sense of security, that COVID either can't happen here, it won't affect us, it doesn't affect me. And this is a time when we need to think not just about ourselves, we need to think about the others. And we need to understand that the mother who has been laid off at Four Seasons, the chef who has been laid off at one of the other hotels, the closure of Nisbet Plantation, the continued closure of Mount Nevis, that all of those people impact us. And that because I'm sitting down in a black chain government and collecting a pay, I shouldn't look down on them or say their plight has nothing to do with me. Because it's when their businesses are open and they're working that we collect the money to pay you. So I want people to understand that very clearly, that there's no guarantee. And I can give no guarantee today. We are trying our best. But the best weapon that we have is for people to vaccinate. You recall when these restrictions were introduced, you were told you couldn't leave your house. But who'd have thought that in Nevis, so accustomed to freedom that you can't walk outside your door? You were told that you have to wear a mask. Masks are uncomfortable. Sometimes I'm wearing one and I get a kind of shortness of breath. It happens. I'm not going to sit here and stand here and deny it. You're accustomed to hug and kiss and hug up, go in the band and jam, Juve morning, all of that you were told you can't do. Culturama was cancelled. Restrictions were imposed on our people. And guess what? Our people complied because there was an understanding that these are the things that you needed to do to keep yourself safe. All of a sudden now we have the ultimate solution, which is the vaccine. And people say, I'll take none. I go back again to what the minister from Angola told me this morning. Since the incident in Angola and so many people infected, they're rushing out to get the vaccine. So are we going to wait for that to happen here? Or are we going to do what we are taught to do, even as youngsters by our elders? Prepare. Prepare yourself. You know when there's a hurricane coming, they tell you what? Go and stock up, get your batteries, get your canned goods, get your all of that. It's called preparedness. Are we preparing ourselves? Are we going to sit back and wait and say, somehow, nothing is going to happen here? So, the policy and position right now, we continue to encourage. And I'm prepared, and I've expressed that in writing, to work with the opposition on Nevis for them to encourage as well, that everybody sing from the same hymn sheet and that we move forward in a positive way. At this point, there is no plan in relation to the public service and making vaccines mandatory because, as I said, there are legal issues associated with that. But as you know, in other countries, they have already introduced and are talking about introducing the fact that you have to test regularly. And again, the argument is the same. If I'm working at NTV, since they're here, let me pick on them. If I'm working at NTV and I'm fully vaccinated, I have been responsible. Why should I be forced to come in every morning to work next to a man who refused to vaccinate? Think about it. The same way the man who refused to vaccinate say, I have a right. Well, don't I have a right as well to go to work and feel safe and secure in the work environment? Doesn't the public have a right when they go to NTV to know that they're dealing with people who are safe and that they're not likely to catch the virus from them? Rights are what they are. We call them individual rights, but individual rights have community implications. So that is the position. So no plan at this point about any mandatory vaccine because I said that is fraught with difficulty. But I just want our people to understand that this is an effort for everybody and that it is not a time for us to be selfish and to stand on individual rights to the detriment of the rights of others. Are there any other questions for me, please?
Good morning, Devon Cornelius.
Good morning.
Just a few questions. Can you provide an update on the status of the works at the hospital? Can you provide an update on the status of the one and only resort? And at your June 25th, 2020 press conference, it was announced that the NIA had revised its plans to transform the Vanseim International Airport and will now move forward with a smaller project. Can you provide an update on that? Thank you.
Okay, the works at the hospital. Thank you for the questions, Mr. Cornelius. The works at the hospital, I gather that the external works are now complete. The shell, if you will, that is now done. The roof, everything, walls, that's done. My understanding is that we have commissioned, in the process, let me put it that way, we've selected some consultants and are in the process of reconfiguring the interior. And why is that necessary? It's because the hospitals, as you know, are a unique type of building. It's not an ordinary office building. And so we have discovered that there's a particular flow to the building that they're saying is required. And so the consultants are going to help us in terms of knowing that, okay, X-ray or radiology needs to be next to OR or needs to be whatever. There's a particular flow. So that's what they're working on now. And once that process is complete, I expect that construction will continue apace. But we have had some delays, of course. We lost nearly a year due to COVID. But the external shell is now complete. And that's the last advice that I got. And we hope that the interior work will continue. We are also in the process of not waiting, but we're already sourcing the equipment for the new wing. And incidentally, that new wing is over 60,000 square feet. So the new wing is actually bigger than the existing hospital. So we're already sourcing equipment and all of that. So we're doing that sort of simultaneously. I can't give you an end date at this point. I can get an update, however, and the next time perhaps to give you a bit more specificity. In terms of the one and only, I don't have anything new to report. The last report we had on that is that one final piece of that jigsaw was a financial person to come from the UK to come in and to do an evaluation because of the travel ban currently in relation to UK travelers and because of the difficulties with COVID, that has not yet happened. We are hopeful that as the UK now reopens and they have some of the highest vaccination rates in Europe, that ban will eventually go and that we can move forward. But that, in terms of an update, I have nothing further on that. The Vance Armory Airport, when I said we had scaled down the project, remember that initially we were anticipating doing an international airport there. When we looked at the costs, because the cost was coming in, I believe, somewhere in the region of $90 million. When we looked at the costs, and we considered that right next door in St. Kitts, 2 miles away, you have an international airport. In Antigua and in St. Martin, you also have international airports. We felt that it was probably an unwise investment to make, because we didn't see, for example, a plane would take off from Miami, American Airlines, to fly to RLB, and another one take off to fly to Vance Armory. We felt that that would be a bit much. And so what we opted is to scale back the project, but to create what we call a private jet facility. So the idea is to do renovation works there, expansion works there, to cater to the private jet market, which will allow us to continue to receive regional traffic, but would also allow, for example, when the hotels like Four Seasons have a charter that they bring in from, say, Miami with guests, that they could land right here at the Vance Armory International Airport. And then, of course, to cater to the private jet traffic. As you know, Nevis has a substantial number of very wealthy people who have homes here, many of whom own private jets. And a lot of them complain that they would like to fly directly into Nevis, get in their vehicle and go home. Instead of that, they're forced to fly into St. Kitts because of the inadequacy of the runway in particular. So those are the works that have been that are anticipated. And the last report I got on that is that the designers were still working, the airport designers. As I said, we had contracted a firm called Perez and Associates. They're the ones who did the Argyle International Airport in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And those are the ones we are working with in relation to this particular project. Any other questions for me?
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Good morning, everyone. Jarvis Brown from Vaughan Radio. Mr. Premier, just a few questions.
Good morning, Mr.
Considering that you spoke of delinquencies in payments as it relates to water bills, will the government seek to perhaps impose some stringent measures, not only in the water bills, of course, but also as it relates to electricity? Can we have an update on housing projects such as at the top of Craddock Road as well as in Hamilton? And my final question, sir, the NIA would have mentioned back in March that it is actively pursuing more films and sought to bolster the film industry. Can you provide an update on that as well, sir? And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jarvis. Let me start where you left off about the films. I believe that that is one of the quiet success stories that we've had here on the island in the midst of this pandemic. The deal that we made with MSR Media was for 2 films to be done on the island of Nevis. And they should have been completed somewhere around May, the middle of May, or thereabouts. They came, they moved substantial equipment and personnel here who are actually living on the island now, and they came up with a new model. They said, well, rather than doing just 2 films, we like it here. It's a safe environment. We feel comfortable here. We have all of the equipment and crew here. Why not just continue to make films here? And they launched the Msr Acting Academy. And incidentally, the 2 films that were proposed have now become 6 films, because they've agreed now, instead of just 2, they're going to do 6 films. And what was to end in May is now going to go on until December of this year. The Acting Academy is relevant because for this new film that they've started, remember the first film was called 1 Year Off. The new film is called Assailant, and this new film is using some 7 locals, and I say locals, people resident here in Nevis, who are attending the Acting Academy. They're actually having acting parts, roles in this new movie. So already we're seeing some dividends from the Acting Academy coming, and we're hopeful, and I encourage more Nevisians and Kittitians to engage if they are interested in an acting career. What I have also come to understand from MSR is that they will break in December. They will go off so the crew and everybody can go see their families, etc. But then they plan to come back in January of 2022. And they propose to do an additional 6 films in St. Kitts and Nevis next year. So that, I think, is really excellent news for us. So it really suggests that we are onto something here, and I'm doing my best to encourage and foster that partnership. The fact that they are also looking at locations in St. Kitts to film means that while it has come through the efforts of the NIA here in Nevis, we have created something that is potentially benefiting the entire country. And I believe that all of us should feel quite proud that we are seeking to achieve that. Housing projects, Government Road and Hamilton. I think the project of Hamilton has been unfortunately delayed because there was some, I'm sorry, Craddock Road, forgive me, Craddock Road, yeah. Craddock Road and Hamilton. The project of Hamilton had been delayed because my understanding was that the lands that the government purchased were in sort of 3 different titles, 3 different owners. And so we are in the court even now trying to what we call consolidate the titles. So you have 3 parcels, they're all connected, but they're all different, owned by different people. And you can't do a development like that because if I offered you a home there, Mr. Jarvis, maybe your kitchen is on the other title and your bathroom is on this title. So what we do in those circumstances, we consolidate to create one title and then we start the process. So the homes, I gather, offers have been made and we hope to have that legal issue resolved quickly so that we can proceed. In relation to top of Craddock Road, I'm told that offer letters have already gone out to individuals. All of those developments have been hugely oversubscribed. So, for example, I gather that for the one up Hamilton, which only had about 14 or so lots, that they got, I think, over 40 applications. Similarly here at Craddock Road. So clearly there's a huge demand for housing on the island that we are trying valiantly to meet. But we have also reached out and I've met with some of the titans of business here to encourage them to themselves offer a housing solution to the people of Nevis, so that it's not just the government through the NHLDC that is involved in housing. We also expect very shortly to have a groundbreaking. We're going to do a small development in Rice's village in Gingerland, and that we hope to come on stream very shortly. Delinquency and payment for water, electricity. That's what we're seeking to do. We're telling people that the ultimate sanction is to cut you off. We don't want to cut you off. So we're asking that you come in and make an arrangement. So if your electricity bill is $500, rather than pay nothing, come in and have a conversation. You may be able to pay something, and you continue to do a payment plan until you get to a position where your financial condition improves. Anything more for me?
Chairman Abel again, just 2 quick questions. One, with the border set to be fully reopened, well, we accepting cruise beginning June, July, and the borders opening in October fully. Is the local government in a position, or would the local government be looking towards doing opening centers for testing on the island of Nevis? So if anybody's interested in getting tested, or if the government is looking to go within the communities to conduct tests. And the second question has to do with a report that was made. I know no law enforcement officers here, but there were reports of students being, well, teachers being involved in sexual allegations with students. Can you address that?
The issue of centers for testing, as you said, so the question that immediately came to me was why? Why? Because obviously testing costs money, naturally, and I see no particular reason in asking you to come and get tested if there's not a concern in relation to you. If there is a concern, naturally, if you've been exposed or there's a risk of exposure, then I understand why you would test. Some countries that have the resources have done sort of mass testing. I don't see that there's value in that here. What I want us to do is mass vaccination, because that way we protect people. Testing tells me who might have the disease. That still doesn't help me solve the problem in relation to the disease itself. So that's what we would need to look at in terms of how we manage this whole issue of the testing. Insofar as the question about teachers and some misconduct, you are correct that Reports have come to the Ministry of Education that 2 male teachers were involved in some, I would say, inappropriate behavior, because I've seen some very false and misleading statements in social media suggesting that something quite different to what happened. I can't get into the details. What I will say is that the matter is naturally being investigated, and we, of course, insist that we must have safe environments for our children to go to school, and our females and our males, those who are in school, must be in an environment that is safe. And so I encourage our teachers to continue to act with the necessary professionalism and decorum and appropriate behavior. But I hasten to say that we are not aware of any report of any actual physical engagement with any young person. What we are aware of are reports of inappropriate comments and inappropriate behavior. I can't get into any further details. I hope you would respect that I've tried to do the best I can with the words that I've sought to use. But the matter is well under investigation, and the matter is being dealt with through the usual channels, and we will continue to provide every support to our students. Our schools are safe. Our young people must feel safe at all times, and that is our goal. And our teachers and those involved in education and the care of our young people must conduct themselves appropriately at all times. Sometimes, you know, what big people do, which might be considered a joke, you know, I may make, and I've been guilty of it, I'm sure all of us have been guilty of it, of making jokes that, or saying something that, with respect, and somebody may say, you know, that's inappropriate. You may use a word or use language that is inappropriate. But what might pass between adults as conversation certainly would have no place when you're dealing with children. And so that is why I have sought to respond in the way that I have responded. But as I said, I saw some reports on social media which I thought were very unfortunate. And I also saw some bandying about of the images of the young women, which I think was grossly irresponsible and ought to be condemned. I don't know what has come upon our people that we act in this irresponsible and vicious way sometimes towards each other. But I condemn that unreservedly, because that was entirely uncalled for. So we continue to investigate the matter, and hopefully we'll be able to resolve it in a way that is just to all concerned. Any other questions for me?
Good morning. Elke Hewlett, Department of Information in the NIA. Mr. Premier, I know, well, I was trying to end on a positive note. The movie industry here, I know there was some criticism that it was a one-off shot. They did one little movie and that was it, and that the people of Nevis were not benefiting in any way, that sort of rhetoric. So now that we're seeing a second movie and plans for a third and further, you know, how is that impacting the people of Nevis?
Well, I'm hopeful that it's impacting people positively. You know, they say the best response to criticism sometimes is to succeed. And I have made it quite clear that when we negotiated for 2 movies. That's what we thought was coming. And even with the 2, we thought that that was something groundbreaking and would be beneficial to the island. The fact that they've been persuaded now to move from 2 to 6 this year, and by last report to me that they're coming back next year, and they're now talking about doing a studio and all of that here, I think we're onto something really good. And so I have been doing my part to foster and develop the relationship. And I think when I speak to those involved in the movie-making business, it is the comfort that they feel here, the fact that they think that they're dealing with a responsible partner in the government, the fact that the island is COVID-free at this point, the way we've managed the pandemic, all of those things are things that they point to in saying that this is a place where they feel comfortable enough to continue to do business. And that's what we're seeking to do. Currently, in terms of direct employees, the last count, they told me they had almost 40 locals from St. Kitts and Nevis who were directly employed to them, drivers, makeup people, hair people, you know, costume people. Now the actors that are coming into the mix. We had over 150, I think, extras in the first movie. This movie now we have 7 residents here having speaking parts. So for me it is not only, I mean, we have let me not call names, but we have one youngster, for example, from Nevis, from Newcastle, He is now the third assistant director, or some title like that he has. And he apparently, they're saying, has so much potential that who knows, he's somebody who we may see in the fullness of time developing into a full-blown director of movies. So we're seeing, of course, the people with the lighting, the camera, the sound, and the skills transfer. Because I think when we talk about development, we must understand that development is not something that happens overnight. So when we talk about the skills transfer, for example, that these people can pass on to local technicians the skill sets, so that they were now in 2021, January was when these people came here. They were able to complete their first film by March and start the second one on the 15th of April. I am hopeful that in another year or two, as we continue to build out this industry, they won't have to bring camera crew with them anymore. They won't have to bring light and sound people with them anymore. Because right here in Nevis and St. Kitts, people will say, listen, that is now available here. We have camera people here who can handle this. We have sound, we have lighting people, we have makeup, we have hair, we have costume designers. All of that is available here. So all they need to do is come in with the idea, the investment money, and the actors. And even in relation to the actors, with the Acting Academy here now, we could say we have actors here too. So people can provide support roles, etc. Who knows that one of the same persons resident here, seen in one of these films, might be discovered. I mean, as I said, there are no small roles. Every role is important. And some of the most memorable roles are those where sometimes nothing is said. So I think that this is really something revolutionary that's happening here on the island. And I really hope that our people could get behind it. It is not everything that happens that we need to kick at and complain and criticize. Creating an environment where people feel welcomed, creating an environment where people feel comfortable, where employment is being generated, I think is a very significant development. And I would hope that everybody on the island embraces it as we try to do what people have been saying we should have done a long time ago, diversify our local economy. That's what we're seeking to do. So the short answer, I'm very happy with what I'm seeing. I believe that this thing has legs, that it can have longevity, and I believe that we just need to manage it carefully and to encourage not only MSR, but others as well to come, that Nevis is the place to be and the wider federation is the place to be. Could you imagine things like Saddle Hill and Mount Nevis, Nevis Peak, and Brimstone Hill, and Christophe Harbour, and all of these being featured internationally? Could you imagine the exposure for us? That next year you go on Netflix or whatever, you see 1 year off, assuming it'll be on Netflix, and you could sit down there and watch it with your family and you say, oh my goodness, that's so and so, and look this area. And imagine that is happening globally. People who had never heard of Nevis now have an opportunity to hear about Nevis. So we shouldn't just see it and say, well, only 40 people employed. It's much more than that. Much more than that. And when I see the youngsters, and I told you all before I told the story, I'm sure I told it here, I went on set, and I hear a voice say, quiet on set, and then some big thing went like that, action. And I say, well, this is a Nevis voice I'm hearing, and all I need to see is a Nevision. Local fella, give him that role. And he now is already progressing. So who knows, by the third or fourth or fifth film by next year, maybe they don't need to bring the second assistant director or the first assistant director, because somebody here now would have moved up. And I'm hearing from the filmmakers here that they are very impressed with the talent that they have unearthed here on Nevis already. And so my hope would be that persons embrace it, and we try our very best to nurture and develop it. Like anything else, it's at a fledgling stage, and most things can either thrive or die at that stage. It depends on how we treat it. And we are committed to that, and I'm very happy at what we're seeing thus far. Anything further? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It is midday. It's a good time to end. Thank you all for being here. We hope, God willing, to be with you again in the coming month as we continue this series of monthly engagements. P.S., thank you very much, and to all of you from members of the press who attended, I'm truly grateful.